Yeah, I started recording.
Okay, so we're going to start the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next up is approval of the minutes from June 12th. We have a motion. So moved. And a second.
Second.
David just joined.
Okay, all in favor? Any discussion on the minutes? Anything from you, David?
No, I'm all good, Joan. Thank you very much.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes unanimously. Okay. I have no comments. As the sit-in for the chair. Liaison reports. Al, would you like to, any report?
I'll think of something later.
Okay. Bill Stableford, anything from you as a liaison?
Thank you, no, Joan, we're just here to observe and listen.
Okay, great.
And cheer on John.
Next up is public comments. Anyone in the public like any comments? Anyone online? Okay, we're flying through this. Okay. Now, we're going to review and approve the invoice packet. There's one invoice that was submitted from QA&M. Huh?
I move to approve the invoice.
Okay, I'll second that approval. Do we have any questions? Actually, I have a question. This is dated for 5/31, and it is basically means that the budget for the, oh, there is a remaining balance on it. Okay, yeah, we got 32 left for this month. Okay, just wanted to make sure we were catching up. Okay. So in the future, if the bills can go via email directly to Jacqueline and Kristen, I will forward you the list. Yep.
Thank you.
Because that way they'll take it, they'll forward to Colliers, we'll have a copy so that we all are in sync in case something doesn't get approved from Colliers or on that. So, okay. And I will make sure you get those email addresses. Okay, so did we vote?
Not yet.
Okay, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, passes unanimously. I don't believe we have any line item budgets from to any kind of line item transfers. And so we are on to Collier's update.
I've handed out the updated milestone schedule, not too many changes since the prior meeting. We have, or I should say, QA&M has issued the SD documents to the estimator, so those are in the estimating process. And the next item on the agenda or on the schedule there that's shown is to be discussed tonight regarding the RFP submittal. So that'll be on tonight's agenda. And obviously, we'll also be discussing the CM versus GC options later in the meeting. That's all we have. We have something.
All right.
What is the timeline on those estimates?
So we anticipate receiving a preliminary estimate around July 7th. That was our date. We will do our review process, and then I think we have it on our agenda to bring it to this committee on the 25th. So the 25th of July, it'll be here. So that gives me about 2 weeks to review it, make sure it's all the scope is included, make sure nothing errant was added to the scope, make sure nothing was inappropriately escalated, make sure the alternates are aligned properly. So cost for this versus cost for that is in the right place, the right magnitude of cost. And then present it.
Will we be getting those beforehand so that we'll have a chance to review so that we have the questions rather than reading?
I believe that's what
Gonna
our
try.
instructions are. Yes.
Great.
So, item 43, preliminary review of estimated costs, is that relate to this, or is that something else?
That does relate to that. Assuming that was something that Joe had asked me added in there as far as, getting that information to you in advance. We
Yeah,
just don't
okay.
know that date yet, so that's why it's a.
So then so that we're more prepared for the July 5th meeting with our questions or
20
July.
July 25th, sorry.
Correct.
25th. not
Yeah.
5th.
And then does
No.
Colliers do a review of that as well?
Yes, we do.
All right, so QA&M update?
Great, so we've issued the drawings to the estimator. The majority of our efforts have taken a bit of a pause. We're looking at a few technical issues in-house. How do you get past that? We're also updating the site documentation based on our last meeting and the discussions regarding where to locate the septic field, where to locate the geothermal wells. I know that our site team did a preliminary investigation of impervious surface and that the current design shows an increase of 2% of impervious surface from the existing conditions, which is good. It basically means we're not increasing it. So we can reduce the size of the patio or some of the hardscape spaces, get it to an even match 1-for-1. Ultimately, what that means is we wouldn't have to add any on-site detention as long as we're not overcharging the existing drainage pipes that are on site. So that sounds like good news. And we're just gonna sit back and wait on the estimates. We probably will begin doing some SD refinement and, look into some of the technical detailing of the sort of renovation portion of the project over the next couple weeks. But we're slow rolling it until we find out where we are with the estimate.
And the renovation portion is pretty much the elevator.
Yeah, the entrance,
The
that
entrance.
entrance piece. We've discovered a number of technical issues, especially at the basement level. How to actually construct what we drew. It's a problem us architects have sometimes. So,
Can they wave that magic wand and just?
well, yeah, that's called a structural engineer. He's basically been telling us behind the scenes, we're full of it, and we need to do it this way or that way. That's kind of what we're going through. And no deal breakers or anything like that. So I want to be in a good position to jump into the DD phase of the work when that time comes. So that's where we are.
Any questions?
When would we do the first presentation to the town? Like in a more formal way with this, what we're thinking, probably once we're comfortable with the estimates before the DD phase, or is that
It's probably after the DD phase.
after that?
You have to be, the budget has to be in line, scope has to be in line with the said budget. So then you can report kind of where things stand.
Yeah.
So we could do that after the SD phase. However, there's a little bit of risk involved because the DD phase is the phase where we're gonna have sort of the most accurate preliminary estimates, if you wanna call it that. We'll also have a check estimate. So, and then we'll go through a reconciliation process. So we'll have a much better confidence level that the costs that we have are really in line with the scope of the budget. So I think after the design development phase seems to make the most sense.
You indicated the as designed for the front facade and elevator area, that there's some challenges there. Are you anticipating that's going to affect the estimates you're getting? Or significantly?
Of course, but not significantly. Essentially what the structural engineer was telling us, so some of the feedback we received was that when you come in the new front lobby and you go up the stairs, that it wasn't very open to the cafe area. So we were looking at different ways to open that wall up. But because that wall isn't straight, it's kind of crooked, and it's actually the exterior wall of the existing building. The structural engineer is saying that wall may not have full depth frost coverage. And that's where the lower level connection is supposed to happen. So the structural engineer is recommending we actually tear that existing wall down and build a new wall in that location, new bearing wall to support everything that's around it. It may turn out to actually save money than to try and goof around with that wall. So, I think we're gonna tear it down and build a new wall there. So what we will essentially be doing now is, if you can envision a saw cutting through the building in that classroom bay, all the way to where the courtyard, the exterior wall of the courtyard was, and all of that just gets removed and reconstructed. We were mostly doing that. Now we're definitely doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, is Aaron in the audience? Nope. Nope, okay. So for new business, I'm gonna vote to defer the RFP for environmental impact until Aaron joins us. We'll keep it at number 11, but we'll skip number 11 for now. I don't think I need to vote on that since the person is here. Just continue, and then when Aaron gets on, we'll do it. So why don't we jump into the discussion of construction manager versus general contractor? So I'm not leading that discussion, that's
So I can lead that discussion, and I apologize, I don't remember when it was, but at one point we issued a presentation, talked about the CM versus GC approach, and I think we decided February-ish to punt on the decision until we got to the schematic design phase. And here we are at the conclusion of schematic design. Does everybody need a refresher as to what the difference is between the two delivery approaches?
I think that could be helpful. That would be very helpful.
Okay, gotcha. So I'll start with the general contracting, general construction approach. And by clarity, there's really two major delivery approaches to construction: general construction and construction manager. There's a third, design build, but we are way past the design build route. So the general construction or the general contracting approach is the traditional design, bid, build. So when did the construction manager business start? 90s, maybe? Just prior to 1990, let's say, everything was built with the architect designing, the owner owning, and a contractor, several contractors submitting bids, lump sum bids to build the final plan and specs. And it time tested for years. And in the 90s, a second delivery approach was developed, and the construction manager. Construction manager is brought on board during the pre-construction phase traditionally, and they become, in essence, a partner of the project team. General contracting, you don't see them until you're ready to break ground. I mean, they'll show up at the pre-bid meeting and they'll submit bids, but you will not see them sitting at a meeting like this until after they've signed a contract and they're already into construction. Construction manager gets hired at some point during the design phase, and they will deliver estimates, usually primarily providing estimates. They are developing phasing plans if it's a complicated project. They are providing constructability reviews if it's a complicated construction approach. They are providing updates on market trends, with the construction industry, pricing, long lead items, things like that. So when you hire a construction manager, at least here in Connecticut, you don't choose the lowest price. The GC approach, everybody submits a bid, And traditionally, the lowest bidder wins the work. Very limited in terms of the qualifications, you know, if they have a DIS certificate that says you're a major contractor, you are generally allowed to bid on the project, and if you're not gonna choose them, you gotta have a really good reason for not choosing that contractor. And anybody can bid. Anybody can bid. The CM selection process is a lot like the architect selection process, the owner's rep selection process, where you issue an RFQ. And you can then shortlist to who you want to receive bids from a long list of considered most qualified. And they're submitting a bid on their services alone. Okay, so I'm going to use round numbers. If you have $10 million worth of a construction budget, let's say, you know, $1 million is the CM cost to deliver the project. So it's their trade, it's their field personnel, it's their staff, their overhead, their profit, all of that. That's what you were, and their pre-construction, that's what you were signing an agreement for them to deliver. So during the course of the design phase, you know, they will provide estimates and do lots of other things. And then once the drawings are completed by Tom and his team, the CM will then put it out to bid. They're going to manage the bidding process. They will receive bids from all the trades, the site, mechanical, electrical, paint, you name it, structural. And then you will sign at the conclusion of the bid phase, what's called a GMP amendment. And that says, okay, your $1 million fee is now adding $9 million. So now your total contract is $10 million. It kind of ties to that budget, if you will. Ideally, right? Or you know, ideally it's even under. You don't want it to be over. So now they're into construction, and honestly, they look no different than a GC. I mean, they will still come to the meetings, you know, and report, you'll have a construction manager report. But you walk onto that job site, it looks exactly like a GC job. Sometimes they tend to add more staff, but that means more costs. So a job of this size, a GC would bid it. You'll have a full-time superintendent. There's always going to be somebody on the job site. You may have a full-time project engineer. That's like an assistant project manager. And the project manager will have multiple jobs. This isn't a job big enough for one PM, I don't think. The CM may assign a full-time project manager to the job, and a full-time project engineer, and a superintendent. So we've seen in the past CMs staff it with more staff. The other big thing that's included in the CM contract that's not in the GC contract is what's called the CM contingency. So you'll sign a guaranteed maximum price. And what you're saying is, I'm not going to spend a nickel more than that guaranteed maximum price for whatever Tom has on these drawings and specifications. And that's an important distinction, by the way. Because if it's not on the drawings, or if it's unforeseen condition, or if it's a betterment, it's not included in the guaranteed maximum price. You're going to need owner's contingency to finance those costs. But that CM contingency is there for construction managers' mistakes. So if it's on the drawings, I'm just going to use a very simple one. Doors are on the drawings. And for whatever reason, the CM forgets to bid these doors. But it's on the drawings. He will use that CM contingency to pay for the doors. So you're not going to pay any more in theory for it. It's built into that guaranteed maximum price. Historically, what I've seen is that CM contingency very rarely gets used because they're really good at their job and they're not going to miss bidding doors or ceilings or lights or something. Occasionally, they'll want to use that for maybe acceleration or for something else, maybe to incentivize the painting subcontractor to work overtime so he can pick up the pace and get the carpet contractor to do the, you know, so they'll use that. But oftentimes that money doesn't. But it's a value. So again, if it's a $10 million project, traditionally it's about 3%. So that's $300,000 of contingency that's built into the guaranteed maximum price. The problem is that our budget, you have to take away $300,000 of scope from something for that fund to be available to the CM. It doesn't get spent, it goes back to the town, to you. sometimes if you need that money to finance monitors like this that you want to add after the fact, we can sometimes work with the CME to release some of that money so you can use it to finance some other things. So those are the two major differences. So CM, partner during pre-construction, estimates, constructability, market trends. And then on the construction side, usually more involved staff, heavier staff, and the CM contingency.
On
Did I
the-
miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
I was just gonna say, the other difference with respect to the bidding is with the CM, it's essentially an open book. So you will see, you get to partake in seeing all of it. With the GC, you don't see that. You just end up seeing that final number from that GC. As opposed to the CM, who will share with you all those bids that were submitted, so you can see, where they're coming from, make sure that, they're selecting the lowest bid, or if for some reason they're not selecting the lowest bid, why not? But it's, that's one difference too, with respect to the bidding process. With the CM, it's open book. With the GC, it's, behind closed doors, if you will, and all you see is that final number.
So, as John said, one of the results of that process is with the GC process, the GCs tend to be very competitive because it's a race to the lowest responsible bid. So they may hire electrician Z to get to the project, whereas the CM is going to bid it out to electrician A, B, C, D, E, F. You'll get 10 electricians that bid the project. You look at the lowest response bids, you evaluate all of those bids. It's a lot of work. There's cost to evaluate all those numbers. And then you may not choose electrician Z, you may choose electrician M because electrician M's bid looked more appropriate, or they were a little more experienced contractor. There's lots of reasons why you can choose one versus the other. Our experience is that because of that process, on day one, meaning day of bid, a lot of times the construction management process is more expensive than the general contracting process. But, you, in exchange for that additional cost, as an owner, you get a lot more control over who the subcontractors are, who you choose to put your team together, and what assurance, sort of additional insurance that the scope is all rolled into the process.
So the CM delivery is called CM at risk. Right? The reality is they're going to minimize any risk to them or to you. Right? So the open book process, the transparency and who the bidders are, and you really don't want to take that low electrical number because something is missed and then they're going to become a problem. And then you walk and then you got to pull the bond, and there's all sorts of headaches that could come with that.
One of the reasons the CM process grew, in the industry was because general contractors take a lot of risk. There's a lot of potential reward with that because they manage their whole contract. You have no relationship with electrician Z or framer A, right? The GC has that. And once he puts his bid in, he can go buy that contract out with electrician Z for half the price or 20% below, because he can make money. But he's also at full risk if anything is missed, or if any changes in the scope are missed, he potentially eats those costs, right? So construction managers don't want that risk, right? The whole idea is that we buy these contracts individually. If something was missed, well, we have a CM contingency to cover that. And the construction management cost, their cost, is actually fixed ahead of time. So their fee, their services are fixed and they're not at risk. So that desire for lack of risk adds costs to the project. But there are a lot of benefits to the CM process, especially for projects that are very large or very complicated or have unique phasing requirements, you really want a management team that is complete. Meaning you want one or two project managers, you want a project engineer, you want to make sure that you have a project administrator on your team or a secretarial. Whereas a GC will sometimes not include those costs because they can't be as competitive if they include those costs in their bid. But a project that has unique conditions and needs that staffing, that's a lot of times why you choose a construction manager. Most of the projects that are out there today, the big school projects, greater than $20 million are construction manager projects now. Particularly because of the scale or because of the phasing issues, or you have to build in the summer and then build in this area, you gotta make different areas of the project safe. So they might have a safety engineer on a project, so like a big project like, I don't know, even the Madison school project, they may have a safety engineer that just makes sure that all of the areas are made safe all the time, and that all of the contractors are getting their safety training, that all the contractors have the appropriate badges and identification on site every day because it's a school project and there's a lot at risk and areas are being constructed while the school is in session. So there are reasons why you choose construction manager, but there's also a level of cost that's associated with that, but a level of professionalism.
That was actually the question I was going to ask. It's a fixed budget project. The construction manager approach obviously costs a premium because you've got contingency fund, you've got more staffing, and you're not taking the lowest bid. What is the premium that you pay for a construction manager? Because it's still a fixed budget.
If you ask a construction manager, he'll tell you none because they eliminate all the change orders that they're during pre-construction. They narrow down the scope ahead of time. There's lots of different people that have a perspective on that. I think that margin changes based on the size of the project and the scale of the project, to the point where, a project can get so big that you can't even get a general contractor anymore because there aren't general contractors of that size anymore. In the state of Connecticut, it's generally my experience that there are traditional general contractors that can do this work. They have all their trades sort of either partially in-house or all in-house or out of house. But the sweet spot now is $10 to $15 million is a really good project. They can make money, they can support themselves. But once you get above $20 or $25 million, there's only a few contractors that really can do that work. Once you get above 15 million or maybe even $5 million, you'll see construction managers actually bidding general contractor jobs because they're very similar in nature, just a little different in administrative structure. You will find that, and I've found that when you bid, let's say, a $10 million job to general contractors, you'll find that general contractors are kind of in this range and the CMs are in this range. And that identifies the difference, the premium in cost can actually be seen. And we'll probably experience that in this project if you go the general contractor route.
I'd say between 5 and 10% is a premium. That's what we've seen. Massachusetts, so Joan, you've got this document right here. So Massachusetts ran an analysis, the CM versus GC approach, and they're citing costs of, it's all relative to what the cost per square foot is of your budget, but they're saying it's slightly higher for CM versus GC.
And it sounds like for that 5 to 10%, you get more solid
Yeah.
upfront planning.
You do, but it doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't guarantee a successful outcome. We as a firm do just as many GC projects as we do CM projects. In fact, 2 of the 3 community centers we've done recently were GC, and those were more complicated than this one. And the one that went CM probably should have gone GC, honestly.
Well, you
So,
also mentioned complexity of the project is a factor in making the decision. Given the size of this project and the scope of what's being done, would you consider this a complex project or not a complex project?
not complex. We did $110 million school around the existing school. We had to chop off part of that school so we could build them in, and that was GC. We've done projects with 10 phases, GC. As long as you've got a team here that can help you with some of the phasing, the complexities, the logistics, you wouldn't necessarily need a CM.
In both delivery methods, our experience has been that we have potentially the same amount of change orders in either project. Construction manager does a lot of upfront work to try and bring the scope into allocation with the budget. But the construction manager signs a contract, Mark mentioned guaranteed maximum price, for what's in the drawings. The general contractor signs a contract for what's in the drawing. So no matter which method you choose, there will be, sort of change order process. The difference is the construction manager is more efficient at it because they hire a full-time staff person to basically do that. Whereas a general contractor, sometimes their administration, the administrative staff that they put on a project is less and they handle it themselves. So it's hit or miss. At the end of the day, I've been thinking about this a lot. So for me, there is some benefit to having a construction manager on board. I have signed a contract with Town of Madison that says if it goes over budget and we have to rebid it, I have to do that work for free. So to me, there's a lot of benefit to have the construction manager up front to make sure that the costs are hard and in alignment. But professionally, I think because this project, the building is empty, the site can be cordoned off. It's 80% of the project is just a simple renovation project. And it's in the major trades, MEP and electrical. And I believe that through the competitive bid process, you're gonna get the most advantageous number on day one. I think you should do this project as a general contractor project.
Does the general contractor have a contingency as well or no?
The owner controls the contingency.
Well, let me answer that question. You will have your own contingency. I
I
don't
know
know.
we have it in the budget.
Yeah, these are, the question is, did the GC have a contingency? They might put something in there
In
to
their
protect them, they
bid.
might, but they're gonna be very careful with what they put in, like Tom said. They're submitting a bid, if I'm EPC construction, I'm submitting a bid against DEF construction. I wanna make sure I'm lower than DEF construction. I don't wanna have my bid with a contingency that they may not be carrying. If they come in lower than me, you're gonna choose them. So my guess is there isn't much of a contingency in the GC lump sum.
And the second question is, have you ever had somebody go out to an RFP for either or? So you can, if you're either one of these, so you
On the
choose.
private sector,
Okay. Just double check.
the things you can do on the private sector.
Okay.
No, what? Okay.
But if you put a general contractor bid on the street, there's nothing that prohibits construction managers from bidding the project.
Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of firms do both GC and CM.
Rocky Hill was like that. I think the general contractor that we had on Rocky Hill was a construction manager.
So are there any components of this project that would cause you to recommend the CM approach?
The only thing, it depends on equipment. If we needed to do an early package or something that had a long lead time. Now, that's a bigger issue in the school. Occupy in September. I know we want the building to be done, it needs to be done, but, if there's a real reason to have this building open in October 1st versus November 1st, then we may want to consider it. But outside of that, I can't see anything that we really want to drive us towards a CM approach.
On this project, though, we will need a new electric service. And whether it's CM or GC, we will probably recommend that the town consider paying for in advance or stored materials to order the transformers and the electrical equipment ahead of time. Because it's taking about a year to get that. So we would we might be asking the town to take some risk in order to manage the schedule.
Is it gonna be a generator?
Cost increases. That would probably be an alternate.
Generators are
Because
ridiculous.
that's an issue as well.
Yeah.
16 to 20 months.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see, I don't think there's anything super complicated about the geothermal project. The only phasing challenges we might have are with the athletic fields adjacent. What is the ultimate work that's gonna be done there, and how do we coordinate that with the town, and the recreation department's use of those fields? When do we have access with it, to it? You know, where do we have staging areas, where are the make safe areas? But those are things that I think on this project we can coordinate. Because we can just circle the building and create some staging area.
Yeah, from a quality perspective, that to me is one of the biggest risks, right? There's an electrician that bids at 20% under right now. We're stuck with a building that's got problems after it's open. What sort of mechanisms do we have to mitigate that risk? Is that a bigger risk from a GC perspective than it is from a CM perspective, because we have less visibility into that they're picking, fly by night electric company, and
They're gonna be careful. They're not gonna, GCs are smart. They're not gonna just choose, if they see a road number come in,
yeah,
they have no familiarity with that. They're the ones on the hook with the GC, not the CM, because they're signing a contract with you. So if that subcontractor falls or fails, they've got to pick up the pieces. So they're not gonna be out there really taking whatever number. They're gonna be cautious with. That's one. Two, you're gonna have us, you're gonna have Tom's team monitoring the quality of the work. Whether it's a CM or GC, that doesn't change, by the way.
Although, sorry, if you go the GC route, a lot of times we recommend that you hire a part-time clerk of the works or a clerk of the works or third-party observer.
That's what we do.
Yeah, either through Colliers, yeah.
Well, no, but
or to the other-
we've already built in the time to be on site, it's literally 2 minutes from our office.
Right.
So, we'll be on site. On.
I'm not privy to their contract.
So we'll be on site, daily.
You can walk there in
Sure.
15.
What's that?
You can walk there in 15.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So we'll be there to protect the quality interests.
To answer your question though, again, in fairness to both delivery methods, I do think there's a higher risk, and this is just my opinion, there's a higher risk of getting electrician Z minus in a GC process, because you don't have as much control over the subtrade selection as when you do the construction management process. And I believe that one of the reasons the construction management process tends to be more expensive is because the construction managers want less risk, and because they want to present less risk to the owner, they are very quick to select a more qualified subcontractor at a higher price. If they have a confidence level that that subcontractor will deliver potentially at that time a better quality of work.
Right.
So that means that there's less, a GC is more likely to take a little bit of a risk and go with an unknown subcontractor if it means they're gonna get the job. So, yes, I think there's a little bit higher risk, but again, as Mark pointed out, it's our responsibility to stay on top of them. I tend to work harder in the construction administration phase when we have general contractors than when we have construction managers.
Okay, David, do you have any questions?
No, Joan, I think I'm good for now. Thanks.
Any other questions on the discussion?
Just one final one. You mentioned that we're gonna be under a lot of pressure to pick the lowest bid to go GC route. Is that also, like, kind of talking about the road number aspect, is that you find that process, you still have some flexibility there?
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's like,
mean,
well, this GC's 5 million less than everybody else. It's
Yeah.
clearly,
there's some level of qualifications that they'll need to meet, minimum level qualifications, but again, similar to the architect selection, the owner selection, you're not gonna meet the team and have a conversation and get the warm and fuzzies with your GC.
Right.
Well, not that you would, sometimes with the CM, but you're gonna get who you get. And we'll have some flexibility as to how they staff it or not, who they use for staff. We don't like somebody, the GC team, we can ask for them to be replaced.
Also depends on the actual bids themselves. So let's say you receive 10 bids and you get one and there's a significant gap between the next 3 bidders and the next 3 bidders are kind of tight together. There may be an indication that something is awry there. And when there's a big gap like that, it's easier to make an argument that there's apparent financial discrepancy or something's been missed.
Well, they'll be open publicly, so if bidder A comes in at $7 million, bidder B, C, and D are 10, 10.1, 10.2, bidder A can say, oops, what did I forget, what did I miss? And more than likely, they're gonna pull the bid. Okay.
In those cases, if the bids come in and there's 2 or 3 bidders that are within a couple $100,000 of themselves, we may have discussions with each of the 3 bidders and do a bid review so that we can glean some information to find out what each bidder had in their bids so that we can maybe verify the lowest. When the bids are really tight like that, you actually have a little more flexibility because there's not a lot of public pressure over $500,000 one way or the other potentially, or even if it's $100,000. If one firm is significantly more qualified, or let's say they have a subtrade contractor that is more qualified, like a geothermal contractor that's done 10 plants, you can establish reasoning to select one contractor over the other. So you have a little more flexibility in that circumstance. So the bids will weigh in on your ability too. And I do believe that state law does not require you to take the lowest bid. You're required to take what you consider to be the lowest responsive bid. So, again, public pressure is that, hey, you have to do what's most financially advantageous for the community, and that's part of your task, right? But so when the time comes, we will be advising you on that as well.
And then one last question, the grants that we've received so far, are there any kind of stipulations on how we go out to these contracts because of these grants?
No.
Just double checking because I don't.
That's a good question. You might want to have your liaison do some legwork on that. But sometimes if the grant, you have to follow the money. So if the grant's a federal grant,
Right.
The federal procurement requirements may be slightly different than the state's procurement requirements, which I'm sure are different than the town of Madison's procurement requirements.
Right.
So a lot of times, and this is just my experience of prior projects, when we look at all three procurement requirements, we take the most stringent in each particular area so that we're covered and there's no question later. If these grants are coming from the state of Connecticut, you just might want to look at their procurement requirements.
But I don't think any of them would dictate a construction manager approach versus a GC.
Yeah, no.
A lot of it may be about prevailing wage or rates used or.
To what
Yeah.
do you see
Type
has
of
to?
labor, but none of them are gonna say you need to use a GC or C.
Okay.
Sorry, I was.
Yeah, no, I did jump ahead a little bit, because I'm thinking that once we get one of these people, we want to make sure either GC or construction manager that they're following what we need to do.
Yeah.
From a grant standpoint.
A lot of it's usually driven by things they, those types of
Right.
requirements.
Any other questions? Good.
Okay, update on the RFP for the environmental impact.
Do we want to do something, before we do that, sorry, do we want to do like
A poll?
an informal poll of where we sit, or we want to wait for the rest of our?
So this was a discussion only in the agenda, advantages and disadvantages. So there's no vote tonight, it'll be voted on the next meeting. But we could,
We have to make a decision like by the next meeting, right?
That's not
So-
gonna apply.
Oh, it does. Okay.
probably the next meeting, I think Joe wants to do it at the next meeting, I've seen this.
I think that was
Presentation.
Joe's plan.
And that was so that we're all kind of there. You know, if we're talking, it's hard to make a decision, not having been in this industry, but I see the pros and cons of both, it's be a balancing act. But I think that this is, I have to agree with Tom, it's not as complex as some of the other projects that have been, obviously, the renovation piece of it is a little bit more complex, but we're not building from scratch, we're not trying to meld one building with another, and while people are on site.
Yeah, the timing aspect of it. Those are the two big things to me. One, getting as much as we can for our money. It's another aspect, not only getting the lowest price that we can, but getting as much as we can for our money. I think it's another charge that we should take seriously. And then we really aren't, it's not like a school project. We don't have a hard deadline. If we slip a month or 2 months,
Yeah, as long as we keep the public informed as to where we are and where we are in the project and where we are in the budget, I think that's the real critical piece.
I'd rather risk that side if you can get more for your money. That's
Bang for
where.
buck.
I think the fact that it's a fixed budget, we need to figure out how we can get the most we can for what we have.
Okay, so now we'll go on to the update on the RFP for the environmental impact. All right. Hi, you okay? I'm sorry I couldn't get on Zoom, I apologize. Luckily I live around the corner.
I drafted based off of other examples from the CD assessment grants that I found for other municipalities. It's pretty standard, I think. Unless somebody has some technical advice, it will have to be referred to DCD for approval prior to our posting. And also, just on the side, Kathleen Payne did say that she would look at it for me to make sure that it's consistent with what she had already recommended, but I went off of our notes. So that is an option as well. I have been in contact with her. I didn't know specifically, who should be the contact for the grant. I can put myself, but I'm not sure I can provide too much useful information. And Mark, I wasn't trying to step on your feet by putting John on here, but John left me the message, so maybe you're happy that he's the contact. So that's all flexible.
I'd like to recommend a change.
Maybe somebody would.
Anything you want.
But basically, the scope is to do the phase 2 and a phase 3 if needed, which I'm not anticipating. And then just the follow-up on the hazardous building materials, Kathleen did recommend an additional walkthrough to check since the last time they were in was 2015. Really to look for additional mold or water infiltration. And then come up with the remedial action plans and opinion of probable cost. And then I guess one of the questions is we're looking for abatement and demolition specifications as part of this. That seemed to be the standard process for all of these assessment grants. You know, we already did the phase 1 and that information I'll attach to the RFP for everyone and that survey, the HBM survey as well. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. As far as CAD drawings, we may be able to share some of our preliminary drawings, you know, files with whoever the consultant is to get that, those specification plans finalized. But what kind of time frame are you looking for this to be completed? Because that was my other area that I needed some guidance on. Are you looking to have this done within 6 months? And
Is that a question for the committee or for our?
yeah, or for Tom, I don't, you know. What's your time frame to have this phase done?
Yeah,
Like 6 months, is that reasonable to have, you know, if we went through the process this summer and had somebody begin fall potentially?
yeah, I would say sooner the better, because a lot of their information is going to be
Right,
from a pricing perspective. So if for some reason there's something that's a problem that as a result of the phase 2, you know, we want to know that sooner than later so we can build that information into our estimating effort.
so I thought by the time it takes us to get through, you know, assuming that the committee is okay with this general language, to send it off to the state for them to review, we could get this posted maybe by the second week in July. I think it takes them about a week to look at it. Most of these had a site walk scheduled that I saw for examples. Is that something you're willing to do to allow folks to take a walk through? I tentatively scheduled that for Monday, July 24th. That's totally flexible up to your availability. I really just kind of picked arbitrary dates here that I thought. Okay, and then,
Did the grant itself, and I saw the e-blast for the grant,
yeah,
did it have a timeline for awards?
to complete. So, I mean, the FAP it's executed, and he said they could extend it. So when I met with DECD, they indicated that, you know, because technically it was awarded in 2022, it's not a problem if beginning now that they would give additional time. You mean as far as
No.
expiration
A
or?
timeline for when they would decide that you would be awarded the brownfield stuff.
Oh, we already have it. We have $200,000. It was awarded in 2022.
Oh, I misunderstood that. I'm sorry.
No, okay, yeah, so the money is here, well, yes, and my understanding is it won't cost anywhere near that, but we might as well put all of the assessment we can in this.
So the grant is for this service,
The grant is for this assessment.
not necessarily for the cleanup or.
No, it's only assessment, and I was informed not to bother to apply for any future grants.
Oh.
Because we may have maxed out on this project. Because I already asked that question. Well, are there any remediation grants? He said, don't bother. I said, okay, worth a shot.
Yeah, that's from the state, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think 4 million is kind of a good one, so.
I figured. So anyways, I figured, deadline for submission, August 4th. That would give a few weeks. It's 2 weeks following the site walk to have a proposal in. And then an estimation, what we're ready to move forward, hopefully.
And if it comes back to us
Contract by September.
September 1, they need to start
That's
working,
what I-
so then, the detailed information will
Yeah,
get
we'll
back to
have
us by March of next year. Is that gonna delay?
I don't know how long it will actually take. I mean, I just kind
It
of
shouldn't take that
picked
long.
6 months.
Yeah, I mean,
Should we narrow that 6 months, because if you give someone 6 months, they're gonna take it? It's.
Our
what I found
objective
in my
is to
business
complete the
life.
scope of work within what timeframe? Have you?
3 months.
Yeah, I would say
3?
3 months,
Okay.
and that's more than enough time for what.
For the phase 2. Now, if the phase 2 discovers that phase 3 needs to be done, then they can extend their time frame.
Okay,
And I did put in here as far as the scope and cost that following, following the completion of the phase 2, that they need to meet with the committee to review the results and determine the final scope moving forward. If there are additional tests.
Wait, when are the construction documents due? When are the signed out drawings due?
You know,
First. Or July 15th. So yeah, we would want their remediation specs, or we would like the remediation specs and the estimates for the remediation within that 90 days.
Well, maybe there's room to move this up. I mean, if this language looks okay, I can send it to DC
Yeah.
tomorrow.
I think you're-
Maybe they'll just turn around and we can post it early.
Yeah, and you only need a couple of weeks for this type of proposal.
I mean, I can move the walk up if you want.
July 24th.
Or we could move the deadline up to a week after.
Yeah,
You know,
I would
maybe they don't need
definitely
the full 2
move, yeah,
weeks.
they won't need that much time. And if you can get it issued earlier, even better, just move it all back.
so try to build another 2 weeks in, so that.
Yeah.
Maybe I could issue it by the
Yeah, we
7th
can-
or the 10th.
Shave off a week before we issue it, and then shave off a week from the overall submission, that's 2 weeks, we just picked up right there.
Yeah.
And let's just say 3 months at the most.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, the inspection, the analysis for the phase 2, they've already done a full report of the environment of the building.
Right.
Right, plus O'Neill did that, we have their estimated costs.
Right. I'm not posting their
No, I know
estimated
you're
cost
No,
though.
no, no, it should be.
Yeah.
But, so we are, I mean, 95% of it, so now it's just a matter of looking and see what has changed since 2015, and if anything's changed, it's just maybe some more water got in there, you know, some more.
Few more broken
but
windows.
We don't have any more added asbestos for lead.
Right.
That's already been
exactly.
established. So,
you might be able to make the 3 months too.
I'm sure we could, I mean, if it's busting on me that gets hired, I move with Kathleen all the time, like Kathleen, can we get this?
Yeah, I think she's
They're
eager
gonna be
to
competitive.
submit a response.
Okay, so we want to try to move up the schedule by a couple of weeks, then maybe complete the scope of work within 2 months rather than 6. Since it is phase 2 and 90%. of
3
it-
months.
Oh, I thought so I've got 3
I was
months.
thinking
Maybe
maybe 3 to 2 months.
2 to 3 months, we'll say.
So I thought a phase 2 was more invasive than a phase 1.
It is.
So it's, but you were saying it's just the difference between what's changed.
Well, that was
That's
just
just
for
for
the
the
building,
building.
not for the site.
So they're still gonna do a phase 2
Yes.
site.
Oh, yeah, basically,
Which
it's
fits
this
and
site,
stuff, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
mostly just for the underground storage tanks and the septic system. Those were the only
Okay.
2 things that were.
Okay.
But if they start August 15th, then September 1, then August, then October, November. If we could have them at November 1st, that's 2.5 months. That would align with our schedule.
So we just
Yeah,
need to
we
know
should
that they have to be
minus those.
approved by the board of selectmen, which would be,
July 24th.
or, no, it would have to be the August. what's it?
Yeah. So do they only have one meeting in August? You only have one meeting in August.
We can always have a special meeting.
That's true. This would,
But that would still get us to the, August 18th for contract. I can do
That's
that.
fine.
Yeah.
Say November 1st.
But
And
the
if they can't, if it slips, it slips.
The scope of work by November 3rd.
any questions on our prayer?
So,
David, any questions? Oh, sorry.
yeah, just one, so if a phase 2, in terms of you need a phase 3, that also is paid for by the grant?
Yes.
Okay.
It's technically not identified in the grant, however, DCD said they often will revise the scope, and they've approved this language in the RFP.
In the RFP, okay.
Because they assume these things. There's plenty of money that they give us.
David, anything from you?
No, I think I'm good, Joan. Thank you.
We're good on that discussion and the changes. You're all set, Aaron, with the
Yes,
modifications?
thank you.
Any public comments? Do we have any public? No one's on. Public?
Thank you, we're learning.
Okay. Hearing no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Good meeting, Joe. Good meeting. I like these. Matter of fact meetings.